Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board of Wednesday, the 18th of March 2026. I'm Councillor Colin Stewart. I'm the Vice Chair of the board, and I'm joined by the Clerk to the board, Mr. Hendry, and Ms. Guild, by the Chief Officer, Jackie Pepper, and by the Chief Finance Officer, Donna Mitchell. Unfortunately, the Chair, Mr. Jones, couldn't be with us today, so I'm taking the chair for today. Clerk, do we have any apologies or substitution?
Thank you, Chair. We have formal apologies today from Brian Jones, Bernie Campbell and Monica Doyle.
Thank you. Quick membership update, just to update the board that at its meeting back in December, which was just after our last IJB NHS Tayside board reappointed Mr. Black to Perth and Kinross IJB. So welcome back. And I think it would also be appropriate at this point to congratulate our service user representative, Sandra Auld, who has not only been recently appointed to the working group on IJB public partner voting rights, but has actually been appointed to the board of the National Care Service, the formal board rather than the shadow board, and that starts in April, I think, Sandra. So congratulations on that. Okay, are there any declarations of interest in items on the agenda before us today? Seeing any declarations of interest? So we'll move on to the minute of the last meeting, which was on Wednesday, the 17th of December 2025. Can we agree the minute of our December meeting? Agreed. And I'll just ask if there are any matters arising from the minute before we move on with the agenda. Seeing any matters arising? Okay, we'll move on then to our first substantive item, which is the Chief Officer's strategic update for this meeting. Chief Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. You have members have in front of them today a report providing an update on a number of matters, a range of national and policy updates, as well as some local developments and service updates that are of interest to the IJB. The first update there is to acknowledge that there has been a revised statutory instrument passed in relation to the voting, the amendment order in relation to voting rights on Scottish integration joint boards, and that from September 26, voting rights will be extended to unpaid carer representation, service user representation and third sector representation. I understand that that will be implemented from September 2026, and that national guidance will be produced on that, and we will await that and take further guidance in relation to how that will be implemented locally at that point in time. But I think it's important to recognise that there is likely to be a need for national consistency around that, given the change in the legislation. So we await the national guidance, but knowing that one of our IJB members will be a part of the group developing the guidance, I think that gives us a really good start in terms of how we take that forward locally. There's a number of other matters that are raised here, and just to draw your attention to our ongoing work in support of the financial settlement for the IJB that a number of us met along with the council leader, the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care and the Minister for social care and wellbeing and sport. And that was a really good opportunity for us to set out the challenges that we've been experiencing as an HSCP, but as an IJB in terms of the strategic role that you play. And he did, as it says in this report, commend the work that we've been doing locally in terms of our performance, particularly around flow through the hospital system and managing delayed discharges, and has subsequently provided a letter to the council leader that also sets that out. So it was good to hear that being acknowledged at a national level. You've been given a site here of an Audit Scotland report on performance across integration joint boards in Scotland, and there are some recommendations in that report in terms of how integration authorities and health and social care partnerships are performing, and an opportunity to use that as a tool to benchmark across Scotland. So if you do have an opportunity to have a look at that, it's well worth having a look at the data there and how it's represented. And I won't go into the detail in relation to some of the other matters that are likely to come up in other parts of the agenda, Chair, but just to draw your attention to the appointment of a new Executive Director for Public Health by NHS Tayside, and Dr. Kate Geary took up post at the end of January. Sandra MacLeod, who was the Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Lead for Mental Health and Learning Disabilities, retired in February, and as you may have heard in other news bulletins, etc., the new role for Director / Chief Officer for Mental Health and Learning Disability will take up post on the 30th of March, and that's Dr. Lynn Taylor, and I'm actually meeting her tomorrow in advance of her taking up post to support her in her a handover and induction to that role. And I think that's all I would like to mention, except there's one other additional matter that I would like to signpost to you that's not in the report because it was only published on the 10th of March, and that is that the Scottish Government has written a report on the National Care Service Forum that took place in November 25. There's a report on the Scottish Government website. Happy to send out to members a link to that, but it covers key issues and key matters that you'll be very interested in, including rights to breaks for carers, self-directed support, and the implementation of the National Social Work Agency, and a vision for what social work might look like in 5 years' time. So happy to send you a link to that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the update there? Mr. Black.
Thanks, Jackie. Probably just some clarification for me because I can't get this really round in my head yet. And the fact that we're going to have voting members with, that's how the IJB should have set up in the first place, but that's irrespective. But now that the fact you've got voting members who are going to impact on the finances that are gifted or not gifted, are given to the IJB from council and NHS, and they have the responsibility to have a balanced budget. Same as the IJB has to have a balanced budget. So I could see down the line conflict coming here unless the information that's gained by the development of this starts to see what the impact of that voting can have on partners' organisation. And there's also, I think it's coming up for the scheme of delegation, comes up, and again, I think that could impact on that. And the East-West, whatever they call them, the the east of Scotland and the west of Scotland sub-nationals, yes. I get mixed up with how many nationals and sub-nationals and internationals that we have. And all these things actually impact on the capability of the IGB to function. And I have reservations.
Okay, I think the I mean, there was an open consultation period, obviously, where representation could have been made. But I think the issue now is that the guidance which supports the statutory secondary statutory instrument, the SSI, which has changed the position on voting rights. I think the guidance will be key in ironing out the issues that you've got reservations about, Mr. Black. And Mr. Hendry, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just want to come in and I don't know if Sandra, you may wish to comment as well. But yeah, I think in terms of discussions around this, I'm aware that there's a number of discussions taking place between Scottish Government and COSLA. And also I was involved in a meeting this week with the Standards Commission for Scotland, who are also looking at and giving kind of guidance around that, just in terms of the implications of it. As you say, this is an additional function being given to other members of the IGB. So I think from our point of view, we're awaiting that further guidance as to how that works. But yeah, I think we would need to have discussions surrounding our own kind of governance documents and how that would work. But as I say, Sandra may have more of an update from the working group.
Thank you, Scott. And I think the concerns you raise are you're not alone in having those concerns. I think the principle that as a member of the IGB, all members their role is to represent the best interests of the IGB and not the organisation that they are from, and that will continue once the voting rights is in place. Nationally, I think there is a real drive to ensure that the training and development that's in place for public partners allows decision making to be informed, and I guess that's what we need to be aiming for. I had discussion with Scott around some of the topics that were coming up at the Short Life Working Group, and I'm very happy to take back concerns, and there still is an opportunity to shape the guidance that will come out. So I'm very happy to act as a conduit for that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That's appreciated. I'll let you come back in quickly, Mr. Black, and then we'll go to Councillor McCall.
Grateful that that's happening, and I reiterate, I'm not against partnerships and voting rights. I think it should have been established at the very start when it wasn't established. But trying to play catch up creates a lot of problems.
I will come to Councillor McCall, but Maureen, sorry, Mrs. Summers, you did have your hand up during a previous point.
Yes, I think Martin said that he was concerned about the financial impact of this. Explain that. What is the financial impact that voting for carers, public partners, and third sector would have?
I think if I interpreted Mr. Black's concern correctly, it was that the council and NHS Tayside both make contributions towards the overall health and social care partnership budget, and therefore previously the councillors and NHS board members have been the voting members of the IJBs, but the public partners don't represent, if you like, a constituency of people who are delegating functions to the Health and Social Care Partnership. I mean, obviously you are representative of your own service user, carer, third sector constituencies, but I think if I interpreted Mr. Black correctly, and he's nodding, that it was just a concern about that. But I think it's useful to have confirmation from Mrs. Auld that the work on developing the guidance is still ongoing and still open to taking input and developing that into a final working document. Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. I too share some concerns about democratic accountability, simply because of the way that councillors are elected and board members are appointed, because we have, we have our own sanctions and various other codes of conduct that we can be held accountable to. But I wanted to maybe give a wee bit of additional reassurance on the budgetary situation, as we found recently with Perth and Kinross Council's own budget deliberations. So the way it works is that now Jackie will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I hope I've got it right now after all this time, is that the Health and Social Care Partners will put in a requisition to the partners, which is the Health Board and the Council respectively, for the funding that they feel they need to deliver both the statutory and the discretionary services that they want to continue with. In the case of social care, it is up to the council to determine how much they contribute, but I think crucially, it's also up to the council to determine if they want certain services to be scaled back if there isn't sufficient funding to go around. So that doesn't necessarily reside wholly with the IGB. And so in terms of the budgetary impact, it really resides with the respective partners. I think that's correct, Jackie, is it? Or have I maybe made it too simple?
Yeah, I think that what you're describing, Councillor McCall, is some of the discussions that we've had as we've been preparing for a very difficult financial situation, and but the description that I think you gave, where, for example, in the past, the Integration Joint Board may have made a decision about reducing a service or actually deleting or cutting that service, that some of that would actually sit with the local authority in terms of how that would work. But that doesn't detract from the role that the IGB has in terms of that overall strategic planning and strategic accountability, I think, for managing the delegated budgets that you have. But I think as we move into really difficult territory, as we move forward, then that gets greyer and greyer. So,
thank you, Jackie, for clarifying that. But I think that's really important that everybody understands the roles and responsibilities. And I think it became clearer to me during this particular budget round, because we faced a particularly challenging situation. And we had to get some clarity around those things. But I really welcome the fact there's still guidance being sought, because I think everybody needs to understand exactly what this means and who's responsible for what and how the responsibility lies in those sorts of situations. And also maybe just for a little bit of context, here in Perth and Kinross, some years ago we had a situation where non-elected members on a particular committee overruled the elected members with quite a significant impact to local community. So we actually made a decision as a council not to have those voting rights there, because people who made that decision had no democratic accountability. So I think there's that tug and pull. But I fully understand, as both Maureen and yourself know, I've a vested interest, and when I'm not a councillor, you never know, I might pop up here anyway with a viewpoint. So I think it's important that we get those balances right, and that the guidance reflects both the responsibilities of all the respective partners and how they work together, so that there's not any misunderstanding about where the accountability lies. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCall. And I think maybe just on the point, I don't know if Mrs. Auld wants to come back in, but I think maybe just on the point about democratic accountability, it's good to note that here in Perth and Kinross, we've set up specific roles and responsibilities for the service user and carer representatives on the board, and we actually most recently had an actual election process for I think the service users were most recently reappointed to the board. So I suspect that once again Perth and Kinross IJB is and Mrs. Auld is confirming this with nods. So thank you. That Perth and Kinross IJB is leading in terms of the way that we implement these processes. Do you want to come in, Sandra? That was what you were going to say. Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no other questions on Chief Officer's update, we will move on to item 5.2 on the agenda, which is the Tayside Mental Health and Learning Disability Services update. Chief Officer.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to introduce this report. This provides an update on strategic matters relating to mental health and learning disabilities and covers in a bit more detail an update on the model of care and covers a lot of the detail that's set out in a progress report that was issued to IGB members in February and provides a formal update to the development session that we had on Friday the 13th of March in relation to a whole range of matters, and that was led by the NHS Tayside Chief Executive on Friday. And just to cover on a number of points, the work that's been taken forward through a medium-term plan attempts to address a number of matters, including the complexity around governance and leadership that has been mentioned in successive independent reports, and the continuing level 3 escalation of NHS Tayside on the performance framework in relation to mental health services. And there's a fair bit of detail around that and the way in which the matters raised by the external auditor report back in November are being taken forward. In this report, there's also a bit more detail on where we are with the model of care for adult mental health and an update on the stakeholder engagement that took place across October, November and December. And you'll see there that was fairly extensive. A new leadership and decision-making group has been established to work with an externally commissioned organisation called Stepped Care Solutions, and a pretty frequent meetings with, this is a Canadian-based organisation, but they're coming to Tayside at the end of March, early April to do some on-site activity as well. And they have a track record in implementing easy access, population health-based mental health support across at a countrywide and at a regional level as well. They're working with NHS Wales and as a whole organisation around this as well. So I think we're well advised and well placed in our work with them. And that's supporting that move from what is the design of the model of care that's been presented to you previously, but taking that forward into identifying what are the core components of that model of care that would need to be implemented, assessing a state of readiness across the complexity of the landscape that we have, and helping us to devise an implementation plan. So it's anticipated that the final model of care with the implementation plan and an assessment of readiness will come forward for approval to the 3 IGBs and NHS Tayside. There's also confirmation in here on the learning disabilities transition work. And I know that you asked questions on that previously, Maureen, so just to address that the date for the commencement of those moves is Monday, the 23rd of March, so that's next week. For the first phase of the moves from Carsview to Murray Royal and the refurbished wards there, and that will continue through to the with the further moves from certain people within the Strathmartin environment and our ongoing discharge arrangements for long-term patients at Strathmartin will conclude, and I say our, that's Tayside-wide, will conclude in December, and that will then lead to the closure of the BSI unit either in December or before December. So that's our position on that, and this report updates you on it. So there is a very detailed closure report, and that's not been included in your papers today, just because of the level of detail that's within it. But happy to provide that for anybody who wants to see that confidentially. Thank you.
Just to say, I'd be really keen. Yes, I'd be keen to see that. Thanks, Jackie, not least because of the work that the National Care Service is doing around the coming home report. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on the mental health strategic update?
There we go. See, get it done, it works. So, yeah, no, it's not really a question. It's more just a comment on the moves from Strathmartin and how actually well it's actually happened. I think when we first went in there, we were quite sceptical that a lot of people couldn't move or wouldn't want to move, but it's now a handful of people that due to other circumstances they're unable to. So it's actually been I'm not going to say it's been a smooth transition, but it's been, we're getting there. And I just would like to thank my staff side colleagues and HR colleagues around that from NHST side that have been able to get this to the position that it's in, because it has been a big piece of work from other colleagues. Thankfully, I've not been that involved in it, but it has been a big piece of work, and it's a good story for a partnership working within NHST side that we've been able to get from a position where it wasn't even on the table to it now. We've got a moving date, which is fantastic.
I just really to say thank you for saying that, Lindsay, because I think it's really important that Integration Joint Board members hear that directly from you as the staff side representative on the board, and not coming through me or anyone else. So it's great to hear that. Thank you.
Thanks both. And just to say, Ms. Hunter, I was speaking to the Chief Officer just yesterday and wanted to get reassurance on that point, so that's really good to have. Any other questions on this update? Oh, Martin, sorry, Mr. Black.
There's going to be a central point that I think Dr. Lynn Taylor will be overseeing at all. Is that right? Well, you've also got you've got 3 IJBs. How is that going to impact? I'm a mental health champion. I didn't understand.
My understanding is that this new role will have to work very closely with the chief officers and with the three IJBs. So you should be anticipating that the chief officers and the new executive lead chief officer director for mental health will be bringing forward reports to respective IJBs and to NHST side. But in terms of that, overseeing the work from one executive lead, then that will be Dr. Taylor.
Makes that slightly clearer for me. I mean, I thought that's how it's going to work. It's going to need quite a bit of work to ensure that works out well.
And just to say that's why she's making the time to come and meet myself, who, because I will be in post when she commences her role. So we're taking that time to do some discussion. I've already met with her on one occasion. This is a face-to-face that we're having tomorrow. And really just to set the very positive conditions for her starting. And I know from those conversations with her in particular, which will be of interest to our IJB, that she's really keen to meet members with lived experience and those networks that we're working with at this moment, and as a very early opportunity. And she will be hopefully also indicating to me that she doesn't want to be based necessarily just in Nine Wells, but will be wanting to be visible and seen in and around the 3 HSCPs. So I hope that gives you a bit of reassurance in terms of her approach. She's not here yet. She can speak for herself when she's here, but I hope that helps you to understand her commitment to that, Martin.
I think it's worth as well mentioning that in your Chief Officer update, you'd mentioned the IJB development sessions, and obviously we had an opportunity at the development session last Friday to hear from Nikki in a bit more detail about the proposed structure and governance around the mental health and learning disabilities. But prior to that, she had met with the three IJBs, chairs and vice chairs, as well, to give us. We were asking some of the same questions, and I think I wouldn't be breaking any confidence when I say that from last Friday's session, we did get an agreement that we would have at least annual overall reporting on mental health and learning disabilities, but that any strategy or directions or plans would need to be coming to under the integration schemes, the 3 IJBs for approval, and that we would be getting brought in beforehand in order to shape that.
Again, I'm putting for me. See this word lived experience is starting to degrade to me slightly, because that's putting people into silos. And it's putting people into being they've got living experience, and that you're going through life and life changes. That you've not just you've got a label and there you are. And you're naming your own world, you're living through that world. And I think we get tied up with this, this, I call them buzzword, because you put people into silos, and that shouldn't be happening, because people are people, and they've got the whole purpose of their life and the lived experience of living with what they're doing.
Okay, thank you. If there's no if there's no more questions on the mental health strategic update, Mrs. Summers, did you want to come in?
The emphasis for the last couple of years has really been on learning disabilities, those mental health and learning disabilities, but we've done a lot of talking and about LD and, the transfer from, where the premises are in now to Murray Royal. What is the timescale for moving from design to implementation for the GAP services? Because, there doesn't seem to be any timescale or anything for that.
I think Maureen, one of the things that needs to come forward is looking at the performance data that we have, because we know, and this needs to come forward to the IJB as soon as it's possible to do so. So I will speak to Dr. Taylor about that tomorrow. But if you look at the performance, we're seeing less people being admitted to hospital. The occupancy rate is coming down. The number of delayed discharges in general adult psychiatry is virtually nil. It's in very small, it's 1 or 2 people at any one point in time. So we can see that move there So once you can sustain that, then you can then think about what is the capacity that we require, and make some fundamental decisions around that. So I think it's using that data and being having evidence base around that. One of the things I think Jane might pick up on in terms of this, this is also very relevant to the effectiveness and success of our community services and keeping people out of hospital and bringing that down to a minimum. So I think it's until you get to that stage, it's very difficult to set some timescales around it. But I think the key to that will be that reporting of performance and making decisions about, how will the IGBs commission the appropriate level of service for inpatient general adult psychiatry. I don't think we're there yet, but we're going in the right direction.
The nuke is supposed to be for crisis care in Perth, and that's where they should turn up in the community. It's on. Do you not hear me? No. Speaking. Yeah, and I just wondered, the nuke, as far as I know, isn't 24/7. So where do they go for 24/7 care? Because most of the crises happen after hours, not 9 to 5, you know. So.
That's an element we're looking at in our service redesign at the moment. So there are a few services already in place, but what we're looking at is what sort of crisis support is it that we actually need? Because I don't think it's right to consider crisis as one particular entity. It can be a number of things. So we have, for example, a pilot at the moment in terms of the north of Perth and Kinross, looking at out of hours provision for those experiencing high levels of distress, just to try and learn more. But I do agree with you is that sort of whole system, sort of holistic approach needs a bit more work, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, and I think it's worth saying in terms of Chief Officer, you were talking about making sure that we've got the community mental health support as opposed to necessarily inpatient provision. That's one of the reasons why, going back to Mr. Black's question, it'll be important for the new director to be working closely with the chief officers of all the health and social care partnerships. And the other thing I was going to say was just in terms of having, visited the general adult psychiatry inpatient and the learning disability inpatient facilities, prioritising the learning disability inpatient facilities was absolutely the right thing to do, not least because of the length of delayed discharges, which were eye-opening in general adult psychiatry, but really taking aback in terms of how long some people have been delayed discharge in learning disabilities. So it was right to prioritise those, I think. Okay, I'm going to wrap up questions there unless anybody shoots their hand up. No, okay. We'll move then on to, oh, sorry, Ms. Hunter.
I actually don't need one of these. I could probably speak, you'd hear me. But it's just on the back of what you were saying about timescales. We do need to also remember that these are people in post that have been working there. So when it comes to workforce policies being put in place, if there has to be any moves or anything like that does take time. And it's not that we're trying to stop anything or anything like that. It's just we need to be able to give them the full engagement, which they already have. We've all went out to NHS side about all the moves, and it has been received. I wouldn't say it's been received exceedingly well, but it's been received. But it's then going through all those processes, like if there's an organisational change, something like that we need to do. These take time. And it's because we need to remember that, yes, it's good for the patients, but staff also have lives and how their working life and work-life balance is taken into consideration. I'm not saying it's going to delay it any further, but that it needs to be taken into account when we're talking about timescales with moves.
Okay, that's definitely the last question or comment. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on to item 5.3, which is an update on adult care. Ms. Menzies, do you want to introduce that?
Thank you. So this is an update on all of the elements of adult care. It outlines progress to date, intended redesign processes, and some of the challenges that we're experiencing. Generally speaking, a significant amount of demand and probably insufficient capacity to deal with that is a theme throughout our adult services, but that's obviously well rehearsed within the IJB. In terms of some really positive stories, that is probably just worth me pointing out. First of all is with regards to a significant change programme focused on individuals with a learning disability or neurodiversity, which is looking at a multifaceted approach, including the development of a new strategy, as we just touched on, a number of elements looking to enhance our community approach to really prevent people from entering inpatient admission where at all possible, and looking at, for example, joint commissioning with our partners to look at how we can be more cost effective moving forward. Another quick area worth pointing out is that within prison healthcare services, again, if you recall in previous meetings, we've had some discussion about some of the recruitment challenges we have within the prisons. And I'm glad to say that we've started to make some real progress there in terms of our recruitment, in terms of our vacancy management and our clinical leadership. So that's great news. And equally, we have had a challenge previously in terms of our bloodborne virus testing, and that has risen from 8 to 76%, which is particularly important in terms of early intervention and identifying issues. Other than that, very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Have we got any questions on this update on adult care? Mr. Black.
No doubt not be surprised to see that the current needs and demands on alcohol and drug services, we continually apply the old ideas, and we continually the increase in alcohol and drug deaths, hospitalizations, usage goes up and up and up. So it's actually shown to me that the old ideas need to be drastically reviewed. And you've got match standards for the ADP that are using in the prison. I question, personally, it's only me, I question whether these match standards serve much purpose. Because if there were actually standards, you'd be hopefully that it'd be coming down the way instead of it's always going up. It's always going up and it's always going up. And I welcome the integrated service model that they have in Perth. That's a great step forward. But what we're still producing and still thinking, and still we're still getting the same results with the old ideas, and they're worsening. They're worsening. So we need to change the ideas. I make that plea at nearly every meeting that I come to. I just think it. Sometimes you give up hope.
Okay, thank you. I think that's been heard. Councillor McCall.
Thank you. I can't now find where my reference was in the paper, so apologies in advance. I have read it. You mentioned about population planning. Somewhere in here, there's a statement about population planning. And I'm wondering what engagement you've had with, for example, local authority on its local development plan B that's coming up in terms of population planning and disbursement around the council area, particularly when you're looking at community services and delivering closer where people live. So I just wondered if you've engaged with that. I have a couple of questions, but we'll maybe do that first.
We've just started more of those conversations, to be honest with you, that alongside a lot of the place-based working. So my answer would be yes, early discussion, not enough, and we recognise that.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I found it was in section 5, alignment to service renewal framework. And I suppose along the same lines as one of the key themes of the population health framework is around prevention. So I'm just wondering where that fits into all of this as a driver for activity rather than the status quo.
I would say the principle of prevention is pretty much embedded in all of the change programs that you'll see within the paper, and that's absolutely essential to help us continue to provide good outcomes, but also continue with a service that's sustainable. And you'll see that in some of the approaches in mental health and wellbeing, for example, where we're looking at ensuring people can access services of their own accord, in learning disability services, where we're looking at an emphasis particularly on communities, and in substance use, where we are looking at that more integrated approach and a more early intervention tier, so that people can be supported with their own wellness and well-being.
Okay, thank you. I need to give that some thought, see how we can demonstrate that it's working. I think is the main thing. And I have one final question, if I may. It's really around the delegated services that are delegated to Perth and Kinross IJB. And so I welcome the prisoner healthcare update and the dentistry one, but I think we also have podiatry delegated to us. I'm just not sure if that's fallen into your area or Zoe's. Okay, Zoe got an update coming, then I'll maybe ask Zoe then. And so my final question really is around going back to the prevention theme again, because children's social care and children's health isn't within the remit of this IGB. So Aaron, how do we work with those who support children's services to make sure that prevention actually starts at the earliest possible age and that it doesn't then overlap into adult services?
Thanks. I mean, I think that's one of the areas that we've been trying to put a wee bit more effort around to make sure that there's greater kind of joined up kind of collaboration across the partnerships, particularly with the development of the new integrated children's services plan. There's a real opportunity to actually have a look at those synergies. I was having a conversation earlier on today and we were talking about the children are in the same families as the adults who are experiencing the difficulties. So it's really important that we don't create silos and distinctions in terms of how services are developed, and we look at that whole family and whole system approach to that. Jane's part of our kind of collaborative working group around the integrated children's services plan, so we'll be looking to define that over the next kind of couple of months, and that will be going to Learning and Families Committee for sign-off as well. So hopefully you'll see within that the intention we have in terms of a whole family and a whole system approach.
Thank you. I think that is just really important because, you know, if we have to make decisions as an IGB, we need to understand that context and what's coming along the line, not just for population planning, but capacity planning and resources and everything else. So it's absolutely crucial and something I think we need to think about going forward. I think the other aspect of all of this as well is that, you know, health determinants is a big contributor to child poverty. And in Perth and Kinross, we're doing really well, I think probably better than nearly all local authorities in Scotland in terms of reducing child poverty. But we need to keep on top of that again, because, you know, again, like you said, the children are living in houses with adults. So I think that all of these things are you know, intertwined. And I think we need to just find a way of when we're looking at these as an IGB that we understand all the aspects and all what feeds into it and what the outputs might be. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Mrs. Hall?
It's a question just generally, if we as an IGB or those out on the coal faces that are applying the GIRFE and GIRFEC principles, should that not ensure exactly what Councillor Cole is saying, that these things then don't fall between gaps?
In theory, yes, but having been as a councillor for 9 years now, I'm well aware that very often they don't overlap early enough. So you know what's happened retrospectively, but if you're looking at prevention, you need to be looking forward. And it's that level that doesn't always join up in a timely manner. That's a word.
Chief Officer.
I was just going to raise two issues, and I suppose one is about the development of the Children's Services Plan. There was a Tayside-wide Children's Services Plan for two successive 3-year plans, so that would be for 6 years. There will be a Perth and Kinross integrated children's services plan. So I suppose my suggestion would be, although children's services are not within the remit of the integration joint board, as you mentioned, Councillor McCall, I think it would be wise to think about ensuring that before that plan is finalised, that there is an engagement with the integration joint board because of the transitions. So I think if we can demonstrate that kind of greater coming together of that whole family approach, I think that would be really good to see in practice. I won't be here to see that, but I'm making it as a suggestion. That was my first point, Chair. And the second point was no, there's a section in Jane's report around mental health about the visits that have been carried out to London, East London and Birmingham, and further engagement about around the TRIES model, which is a globally recognised best practice community-facing model to support people experiencing distress and mental ill health at a local level. So there's a paragraph in here that describes the fact that we're exploring that with partners, and I think if Perth and Kinross was saying we would like to be a pilot area for developing what we have in terms of the NUC and crisis support even further, then I think we would want to be the pilot area for that, given that the NUC was the first crisis hub to be established in Tayside. And I think that would fit in with your question earlier, Maureen, around what are we doing to ensure that people don't need to go to hospital and reduce that as far as possible. But I think just to recognise that we're in an early stage with that. But I think that's a very exciting opportunity that might come if we get that right. It's not about taking a model from Italy and making that work in Perth, but it's about understanding how that would work in our local context, because we know that Perth City is very much a driver for some of those areas of distress and hospital admissions. Thanks.
Not seeing any more hands up. Okay. There's no directions associated with this report, so we're happy to just note that update. Okay, item 5.4 on the agenda is the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership Workforce Plan for 25 to 28. I'm going to hand over to Head of Health, Evelyn Devine, to kick us off with a brief introduction, I think.
That me? Okay, thank you very much. So what you have in front of you today is the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership Workforce Plan for 2025 to 28. Sitting alongside that, you have an action plan with KPIs attached, and that has been delivered through our local steering group for Perth and Kinross, and a covering paper with recommendations, which Zoki is going to take you through in just a minute. So just want to say that we had a pretty good development session on Friday in relation to the workforce plan. We had a lot of questions, and that was very helpful to us in terms of making us think even more about where we need to go with the challenges we face with our workforce. Also, this workforce plan sits in the context of Tayside-wide work. So we have a working group set up with the 3 councils across Tayside, the 3 HSCPs and NHS Tayside. So there's a lot of work going on to understand the landscape and the environment that we're all working in and the challenges that we've got. So I think that's quite important for us to see, and also a lot of discussions around data collection and how we can integrate data around workforce. So yeah, we're not standing still with this. I think there's a lot to do, and the challenges are pretty real, and we need to look at solutions. So with that, I'll hand you over to Zoe. He's going to take you through the paper.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnerships 3-year workforce plan for 2025 to 2028. The appended workforce plan provides an assessment of our current workforce position and outlines the actions that we'll take to develop and retain a workforce that's sustainable over the next 3 years. It directly addresses pressures created by demographic shift, rising frailty, and increasing complexity of care, and it aligns fully with the IJB's strategic plan, as well as the National Service Renewal Framework. The workforce plan is structured around 5 key priorities, each targeting a critical challenge and enabling us to deliver safe, person-centered services now and in the future. The first priority focuses on strengthening workforce data quality, and this is to enable early intervention and timely response to workforce pressures as they emerge. We'll also streamline our current processes by embedding modern digital tools, and this is to reduce duplication and release more time to care. Second priority focuses on developing sustainable workforce models that best utilize skill mix. As indicated in the plan, the HSCP currently faces a significant replacement risk, and this is due to retirements we're projecting for the next few years. In response to this, we'll redesign roles and functions, and this is intended to increase workforce flexibility and resilience, thus ensuring we have a workforce that's equipped to meet this future demand. The third priority focuses on growing our local workforce supply. We'll expand our grow your own pathways and widen workforce participation, and this will be achieved by strengthening partnerships with education providers, employability services, and community organizations. This will open up HSCP careers to young people, mid-career changes, and people with lived experience. Fourth priority within this plan focuses on promoting a learning culture, and this is aimed at enabling leadership development across our workforce. We'll improve induction processes, increase access to high-quality training, and ensure protected time is available for learning, thus helping our staff maintain the confidence and competence required for modern practice. The fifth priority within this plan focuses on enhancing well-being. We will continue to embed trauma-informed practice and to support safe working environments across our workforce. We will also improve the quality of integrated workspaces and expand the existing well-being resources. Together, these actions will strengthen morale, reduce stress, and support staff retention. Collectively, these 5 priorities positively impact on the national health and well-being outcomes and place the HSCP in a strong position to respond to rising demand in a sustainable way. These actions demonstrate our commitment to best value, equality, and sustainability, but also reduce our reliance on high-cost interim staffing measures. The workforce plan carries an inherent risk score of 16 and a residual risk score of 12. However, this will be mitigated through a robust governance arrangement. We therefore request this board to receive and acknowledge this cover report and the workforce plan, to approve implementation of the workforce plan 2025 to 2028, to issue a direction set out in Appendix 2, and to request a high-level progress update every 6 months. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thanks. Have we got any questions on our 25 to 28 workforce plan, Mr. Black?
A question, but also I find this report very easy to read, and I appreciate that, and it's very informative. But when I look at 4.3, the gender profile, that males 14.1, female 85.9, that to me immediately says, well, why are we not targeting males? Why are we why there's no an actual a plan or an intervention that says, right, let's focus some money towards males, because when you also look at the age profile in the third and independent sector, and you look at that age 25 to 45, there's a whole host of stuff there that could be about putting people into further training and education in that level. I appreciate the plan there on the comment that I've to make.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. I think the health and social care sector has a lot of work to do in terms of attracting a younger workforce. And this kind of links to a lot of the actions we've set in this plan and a lot of feedback we've received through engagement. As you know, the level at which we market our positions and posts within the health and social care sector doesn't match what our rivals are doing across other industries like hospitality, for instance. So I think there is a lot of work to be done in that area, bearing in mind our financial constraints.
Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. And I agree with Martin. It's lovely to read and lots of diagrams, which I like. I wanted to ask a little bit about the allied health professionals, because some of them, particularly speech and language, has at least if I can get my colour comparisons right, that the numbers in that area are going down. And is that because there aren't people coming into the profession, or because we don't have the funding to employ them?
So I highly suspect it's a mix of both, because I think the data we've looked at bases on the number of new registrations that are actually coming out of the pipeline every year. And what we're seeing is that year on year, there are fewer people going into these professions. Now that we haven't been able to get to the root of that, just to see what's really driving that. But what you can see is that within AHP professions like paramedics and allied physiotherapists and OT, there's significant growth there, but at the same time, these are the professional roles that, you know, at the root of delivering services within the community, and there is significant investment in these professions. So I think there's something there around about, you know, how we encourage investment in these other AHP professions.
We've got our AHP lead online, Leslie Middlemiss. I don't know if you want to come in and just give us the benefit of your experience there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, and thank you for drawing out around speech and language therapy. As a very small profession, and actually we do have a lower level of speech and language therapy in Perth and Kinross as compared to our other neighbouring partnerships. So there's a bit of both, as Zoki said, there is a bit of both, and a challenge. Often speech and language will be a small proportion. So if a model of care is being evolved or developed, speech and language resource might be a small part of a post, so it becomes difficult to recruit to. But often we're also guilty of sometimes forgetting. I'm not going to include myself in that, but sometimes speech and language are forgotten in the picture. So I would just make a place to for us to mind speech and language and our smaller professions when we are modelling our rehab and children's and adult services moving forward. But yes, a little bit of both, but we are struggling with our speech and language therapy service in Tayside, but also in P&K.
Thank you. I don't forget about speech and language because I understand, and I hate to say this, Martin, but from lived experience, just how valuable the service it is for a variety of reasons, not just helping people with speech, but also for people who have learning disabilities, helping to explain the level of understanding, etc., etc. And I think one of my worries about this is that if there is a lower number, that we shrink our ambition to meet the capacity we have available, rather than saying, this is what we would like to do, how do we fill that gap? And so I suppose I just want some reassurance around that we don't say, you know, we only have so many speech and language therapists and the numbers are going down, therefore we'll not have an ambition to do more.
Yeah, I think, you know, in relation to areas where we use speech and language a lot, in like stroke care, for example, and PRI, and we need to meet the stroke sign standards, so we can't forget about them. And I do think that the plan is to have service plans as well as the wider workforce plan, and that's where we'll be involving discussions and etc. in terms of what that will look like for the workforce.
Okay, thank you. And just similar comments around podiatry, because I think that the NHS provided podiatry service now is really, again, it's reactionary rather than preventative. And you know, as far as I understand it, that very often early intervention there can often identify perhaps some other underlying health issues that will be missed if people aren't able to access the services. So it's a concern. Thank you.
Well, actually, is on the list too. So.
Ms. Hunt.
Thank you for saying what you've said about AHP services. As an AHP myself, I have been banging the drum about speech and language therapists since I became into my role of what I do as staff side. They are a very minute staffing cohort which are stretched to the limit. I would agree with you, they need more investment, but the potential, it's a bit of both. We don't have them coming in, we don't have the funding, and it's not provided. And it is I know we don't forget about them, but they are an afterthought when you're looking at a service delivery, and that really needs to change. Podiatry. I am a podiatrist. So there's a wee bit of conflict here when I'm going to say what I'm going to say. We're trying really, really hard to do what you're saying in regards to not reacting. And I would say we're actually doing pretty well in that. We've got a lot of pilots amongst Perth and Kinross about how we can anticipate, like for nail surgery or vascular care or tissue viability. So there is a lot of work there. I'm not in a position to really speak about that today. I don't think it's right for me to do that. You would need to speak to Zoe or Lynn Baird or Evelyn in regards to that. But yeah, I'll work on the ground on a Friday morning in podiatry, and we do try our best.
I think some of my intel comes from casework. People saying how difficult it is to access podiatry services, or you know, and even when they go, a lot of private private practitioners they open their waiting list and then they almost close it immediately because they haven't the capacity. So that's kind of my knowledge of that is much more broad brushstroke than it is of speech and language. But thank you.
Just to say that there was a section in the lead partner paper on podiatry at our last meeting in December, so just refer people back to that and recognise that Perth and Kinross IJB has that strategic planning role for Tayside. Yeah. So, or it certainly sits within the Health and Social Care Partnership. So just really to think about how we ensure that you're engaged in the knowledge around that service. Now, I know that we've had a series of programme of visits and people like to go to visit a place, but it might be something that we might want to have a focused visibility session around the podiatry service. And I'm looking at Lindsay, but it wouldn't be for her to organise that. Don't you worry. But I do wonder if that would be something that would be helpful, just to recognise the work that the service does.
Thank you. And certainly one of my councillor colleagues only just this morning was expressing how difficult it was to get onto a podiatry waiting list. So if you wouldn't mind staying back afterwards, so that would. Whose hand did I see up next? Councillor Ling.
Great, thank you. I'm slightly concerned to see that absence rates are increasing. Have you got any thoughts on what's causing that and what the solutions might be?
I think the key drivers behind the absence rates you see now are the typical ones. If you look at our workforce profile, so as I was saying, the drivers behind the absence rates you see now are the typical ones. And if you look at our workforce profile, you'll notice that a significant proportion of our workforce is older. And these are people delivering direct care. And so with that comes a lot of musculoskeletal sorts of injuries and other factors related to that drive sickness absence. So the thought to that is that we probably need to be looking at our workforce and how we are sort of planning to bring in younger people and attracting them into these professions as one side of the coin, but also looking at our training programs as well.
And I think that we have seen a significant jump over the last couple of years, I think, in terms of, we used to sit around about 4.5%, under 5% anyway. But yes, as Zoki said, it is an ageing workforce, and really a lot of the sickness is pretty genuine in terms. And we find that the sicknesses are in areas of higher stress, like mental health services, etc. So, but how do you focus in? We have to use our wellbeing strategies. We have to use our focus groups and really try and understand what's driving the sickness absence in certain areas. And I think that's a piece of work on the ground that needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I often think that you spend so much time at work. Often you spend more time with your immediate supervisor than you do with your wives and partners. And it's really important to get the training of those individuals right for the well-being of the whole teams.
It's just as this workforce plan was being finalised and coming towards the integration joint board in terms of the preparation for that, we were noting that we have, in terms of the infrastructure to support this, a work stream around digital, and how important that is, because we have been indicating for some time we've got a workforce that is dealing with rising demand and increasing complexity. So that stretch is very apparent, I think, in some of the figures that you're reflecting on, Councillor Illingworth. So we recognise that we really need to support our staff with the tools to do the job that can make that easier, and actually that they can spend more time doing the work that they're trained for, rather than some of the administrative tasks that come from that. So the more that we support that and take direction from staff about what's the right thing to do, and you'll know that we've invested in Magic Notes as an artificial intelligence tool to support social work staff. So it's that kind of thing that I think we need to be looking at, because I think that will actually reduce some of the the workforce pressures that people are feeling in terms of their day-to-day workload and how that can impact on their job satisfaction and the level of stress they're experiencing. So just to keep that in mind as we go forward. And it's really good to see that that digital development will be part of the workforce plan and ensuring we've got that right in terms of the local implementation of that.
Thanks, Chief Officer. You told me yesterday I had to ask a question to highlight the digital innovation aspects of this, so I'm not going to do that now. Ms. Hunter.
Yeah, it's on your point about sickness absence rate. I think we need to remember that we've came out of a period of COVID and then it was a big push on planned and unscheduled care with all the things that Scottish Government have asked NHS state staff, which have inevitably worked on the partnerships. So there has been a lot of extra work being added onto our staff in cohort, and that doesn't come without a cost or a price to someone's body, especially if it's an ageing population. They're trying their best, and I'm not saying you're saying they're not, but they are trying their best to do what they've got, to do what they have to do with what they've got. I'm a bit sceptical on digital because I don't really like change, but I'm totally on board thinking that we are going to have to do something different because we cannot continue with the way that we're working right now, especially with the financial position that we're all in as well. I think we need to be realistic about it and understand that things will need to change. And I will welcome to work with you all as a staff side in regards to that change.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Just an answer to that. Is there actually going to be a timeline on when COVID doesn't become a contributory factor? Because it seems to be in what we're 5 years out in now. 6 years and we're still putting that down as that's I mean that's I'm not being angry here, that is up to the planners. How is that being allowed to go on for so long as an excuse or a reason? I'm gonna get my COVID injection on 20th.
Okay, I'd assumed that was a rhetorical question, but actually, Chief Social Work Officer wants to come in, and then Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Chair. So we've been doing a wee bit of analysis ourselves within kind of social work and social care in terms of reasons for absences. And as we've kind of just heard today, it's not a simple answer at all. I think the kind of complexity of need that's presenting is also kind of adding to the reasons that folk are off. But what we are seeing actually in particular is that there's no general reason for absence across the piece. What there is cohorts of staff who are impacted by particular reasons for absence. So, for example, our frontline care at home staff are more likely to experience musculoskeletal conditions, and our kind of registered social workers, for example, are more likely to be off work with work-related stress. So there's very particular issues in relation to folks' absence, and I think what the workforce plan will look to do is to address those cohorts of staff to make sure that our interventions are much more tailored to ensure that those cohorts of staff are supported in their roles.
Mr. Henderson.
It was just a comment there on the pandemic. We've just talked about trauma-informed practice. Sorry, my voice is going this a bit. The independent sector, social care, health services all went through a traumatic time. We're talking about trauma-informed practice. A lot of these people are still in their jobs, doing their career that they care about. And I don't think it'll be 5, 10, 15, 20 years. This will live with them forever.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson. Any more questions on our Councillor Frampton?
Thank you. I was just wondering on the 9.2 part of the paper about the difficulty filling vacancies. I was wondering, is there approaches such as offering flexible arrangements for working, career progression options, and is there mental health support offered to staff to encourage role filling in these hard to fill posts?
Yeah, we've been really flexible in terms of opportunities, in terms of how you deliver your role. What we have found though, Michelle, is that actually that's created some difficulties in terms of how we actually deliver the work that we do. So we're actually reverting back, particularly in care at home, certainly to a much more traditional delivery model, if you like, because it's much easier for us to cover the shifts that we need covered, to fill runs for care at home, etc. The flexibility that we offered during COVID created issues for us in terms of how efficient we could be in terms of how we delivered services. But my awareness in terms of older people services in general is there is a general approach of flexibility to people understanding that, as we know, a large proportion of our workforce are women and have lots of other caring and childcare responsibilities. So we're always mindful of that, certainly, and ultimately you want the best person for the role. It's not dependent on how their life runs and their ability to be flexible and delivering care.
Okay. If there's no other questions, Zoe gave us the recommendations at the start, but just to sort of maybe highlight the specific text within the direction to Tayside, NHS Tayside and Perth and Kinross Council to strengthen workforce intelligence through improved data quality, forecasting and real-time insights. Develop sustainable staffing models that optimise skill mix, strengthen integrated teams and ensure safe and effective deployment of staff. To increase workforce supply through grow your own routes, streamlined recruitment and targeted action on rural and hard to fill roles. And to invest in continuous learning, leadership development and digital capability. And finally, to promote staff wellbeing by embedding trauma-informed practice, as Mr. Henderson was just talking about, enhance workspaces to improve and enhancing workspaces to improve workforce retention. Can we agree the recommendations in the report and issue the direction? Agreed. Thank you very much. It is 2:23. I think after this paper we will take a recess. That would be a natural point in the meeting agenda to take a break. So item 5.5 is the strategic planning group update. There's actually a cover paper with this one. Normally we just see the minutes of the strategic planning group, but we are being asked on this occasion to specifically approve something which is revised terms of reference for the strategic planning group. But I'll let the chief officer introduce this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just to say that you have the note of the meetings that were held in November and January, and they're there for your information. But I think what that does demonstrate is the work that's coming through the strategic planning group as it makes its way towards the integration joint board. As the chair indicated, the terms of reference for the strategic planning group have been revised, recognising that there were a number of changes that we wanted to make, really in line with some of the changes in terms of how that group is operating and its membership and chairing arrangements. So you'll see in the terms of reference that there's a governance map that indicates our intention to have locality planning groups, and it's something that is being refreshed presently. Formally establishing a public partner as a co-chair within the terms of reference, because it wasn't there before, but that's been something that we've been working to for some time. increase the chairing capacity through appointment of a vice chair arrangement, and introduce a term for the co-chair, vice chair, and also a requirement to focus on improving national health and wellbeing outcomes into the role of the strategic planning group. So those are all the changes that were agreed and approved by the strategic planning group itself over a series of meetings. And in December, we noted that the co-chair arrangement that Nettie had stood down from that. Nettie Sutherland, who's here today, and we actually have had 3 notes of interest in taking forward support for this group. So that's still to be finalised, but we're in a healthy position with that. So I'm sure I or anyone else who's been involved in the strategic planning group would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Ms Hunter.
Are you requiring staff side around this group? Would you find it beneficial? Sorry, I forgot that you did it.
I think, Lindsay, if that's something that looking at the work that we're doing, I think it may be beneficial, but it's really important that we get the wide perspective, or perspectives are as wide as we possibly can in relation to any strategic issues that are being brought forward. So I think there may be occasions where that's more important than others. So we just need to think about what that might look like, but recognising how stretched you are as well in terms of the work that you're involved in. But there shouldn't be anything that's coming. I don't think there should be anything that's coming to the strategic planning group that you're not already aware of on its way into the IJB. So that actually early preparatory work is probably where you're already involved and cited on. But we can take that away and have a think about it.
Under the 2-year term for co-chair, vice chair, how did it come to term 2 years? Is that to fit in with something? Is it or is it just a figure?
No, it wasn't designed to fit in with anything. I think it was really just to give an opportunity to ensure that there's a refresh and that we can have a bit of a succession planning arrangement as well.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any issues with the recommendations in 5.2. It's really a point of clarity. How does the work of this group align with or link in with or integrate somehow with community planning partnerships?
That's through the health and wellbeing work stream. So we're taking forward a new strategy at the moment, and we'll work closely with the new director of public health to look at how we can strengthen that work stream.
Yeah, Jack has heard me saying this before. You know, I think this is all valuable work, but sometimes I feel that they're all bits of a jigsaw that don't ever join up, and there's maybe bits of duplication, but there's also the risk that things will fall through the gaps. You know, the community planning partnership is a very valuable tool, but there's no remit. It cannot place a remit on either this IJB or indeed the local authority or the health board who might come forward with recommendations. And there's a less likelihood of things feeding up into it other than the people who sit on the partnership itself. So all of those things I think need to be much more integrated somehow. And so what would be quite interested in seeing in the terms of reference, maybe not for now, but for consideration by the strategic planning group, is how do they integrate with these other groups, and how do they provide the direction they want to go in and be informed by the work of those other groups as well? Because very often there's a lot of overlap in terms of the attendees. So it's just trying to make that more cohesive. I'll give that to Jackie, but she's leaving. She's got a day to do it. She's leaving us.
It's just, I suppose, really just as in response to the issues that you raise, which I think are entirely relevant and appropriate in terms of how we further develop that strategic planning role. But there have been examples where, for example, the local authority has been developing its housing strategy. So that has been a connection with this group, and I think that's really important in terms of understanding the particular needs of particular groups of people that we're engaging with. But you're right, it's not planned for. It's been more on an ad hoc arrangement. So I think we need to work, more smartly on that.
I think just in times where we do have resource constraints in certain areas, where we have budgetary constraints everywhere, I think the more that we can try and ensure there's no duplication, or that there's at least alignment, so that even priorities are aligned with each other, so that one group isn't saying this is our priority and this one's priority A is here and priority is B further down, and another group's got it the reverse, albeit from different aspects and different perspectives. We need to somehow pull all these together so they're just much more aligned across the board. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions on this. So can we note the activity of the strategic planning group and approve the revised terms of reference? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, it is 2:31, so 14 minutes, and we'll resume at 2:45. Right, well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now move into the second part of the meeting, and we're going to be talking finance. We have the 25-26 financial position, and then the 26 to 29 budget. I'm going to let Donna introduce these. Chief Finance Officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before I introduce this report, I just wanted to highlight there's been a slight formatting issue in the report within the prescribing section at 7.14, but prints have been passed round and it has been updated online, so just in case anyone was concerned about that. This report is the fourth financial update for 25-26, and it sets out the projected financial position as at month 9, along with an update on the progress within the financial recovery plan. Based on expenditure to the end of December, we are now projecting a year-end overspend of just over 4.4 million, and after applying the remaining general reserves, this reduces to just under 4.3 million, which is around 1.5% of the total budget. And whilst this remains a significant pressure, it does represent an improvement compared to the last projection reported. The most significant pressure remains within social care, which accounts for 3.9 million of the overspend, and that's 3.8% of the social care budget. This is largely driven, as you'll be very aware of, by high cost packages and an increased demand within older people's and adult services. And these areas do continue to experience high demand for care at home and complex care packages. The health services are projecting a smaller overspend at 374,000, and that's around 0.2% of that budget. The pressures remain mainly within inpatient settings, so reflecting patient acuity, vacancies and the use of supplementary staffing. And this is being partially offset by an underspend within drug costs and prescribing due to lower than budgeted price and volume growth. And although this position remains subject to change as the year progresses, and it is highlighted as a specific risk within the report. The forecast also includes an update on the delivery of recurring savings, and as part of this year's budget, the IGB approved savings of just over 2.4 million for 25-26, and it is assumed that 91% of these, so 2.2 million, will be delivered within the year. The financial recovery actions continue to be reflected in the forecast position, and these actions, alongside other in-year movements, are expected to deliver 1.285 million, so 1,285,000 reduction in projected expenditure. So that's therefore exceeding the original 950,000 target. Some actions have remained challenging, particularly those linked to reducing supplementary staffing, but overall the delivery continues to be expected to meet the agreed targets. And whilst progress has been made on recovery actions and additional support has been secured, the underlying financial position remains under considerable pressure, and strategic decisions will be required to ensure long-term stability. And our next report today is obviously considering the 26-27 budget for approval and will cover the ongoing challenges. Finally, I would highlight that this forecast is based on 9 months of the financial year, and we have completed the month 10 forecast since the submission of this report, and it indicates the position has again improved slightly. And for your awareness, the final outturn, so the final outturn for 25-26 will be reported to the IGB and brought to you in June. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions on the financial position? Mr. Black.
Thanks, Donna, for the report and for all the hard work that's been put in to make this what it is. And within my head, we as Perth and Kinross are prescribing, but yet Angus has general practice under primary care. So how is two partnerships? One's got the doctors and one's got the prescribing. No, am I wrong? Wrong here.
Wouldn't want to say you were wrong, Martin, but I'll just come in with what the prescribing and drug cost budgets within primary care services are delegated to each individual IGB. So we have the prescribing and drug cost budget for primary care for Perth and Kinross within our Perth and Kinross IGB, and that's that part that we're reporting on specifically in section 7 in this report. So all the work that we did over the last couple of years when we were looking at our item per patient and how we benchmarked across Tayside, across Scotland, and the work that we did as a board to make sure that we had a recognition that our budget was insufficient within Perth and Kinross, and that was recognised by NHS Tayside, and they provided recurring additional funding for this financial year that we're in, and that was all in relation to primary care GP drug cost and prescribing.
I think it was just to say on the other element of your question, which is in relation to primary care, if you look at the integration scheme, Angus has a lead partner role in relation to strategic planning for primary care, but primary care services are delegated to each of the 3 IGBs, health and social care partnerships, for delivery locally, and I think that sometimes gets confused. So I just for clarity, I think need to say that so that we're not assuming that Angus has responsibility for primary care, because it doesn't.
Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. This only takes us up to the end of December. Are there any surprises in the last 3 months of the year?
Obviously very hopeful that there aren't, but as I mentioned just at the very end of that introduction, we have already done the forecast based on expenditure up to the end of January, and there is a slight further improvement in that. We do have a couple of risks that are quite detailed, and we're monitoring them, but generally our expectation is that we feel quite secure over the projection that's been given today.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the financial position? No? Okay. Can we then note the projected year-end outturn for 25-26? Note that the HSCP senior management continue to work on actions to mitigate cost pressures in the current year. Note that the Chief Officer and Chief Finance Officer continue to discuss the position with NHS Tayside and the Council. Note that Perth Kinross Council Perth Kinross Council's decision to approve an additional allocation of up to 4.18 million. Note the update on financial recovery plan at section 9, and note the risks to the position highlighted in section 11. Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay. So next item is the 2026 to 2029 budget. Chief Finance Officer again.
Thank you, Chair. Before we move into the detail of the budget paper, I would like to recognise the significant amount of work that has gone into getting us to the position where we can bring forward a balanced budget for 26-27 today. This has been an exceptionally challenging financial year and budget cycle for the Integration Joint Board and our Health and Social Care Partnership. The scale of demographic change, the levels of complexity that we are now seeing across all care groups, and the pace of growth, particularly in a rural area like Perth and Kinross, have been considerable. Because of this, we have approached the process collaboratively, so transparently, and now we have a shared understanding across all partners of the pressures facing health and social care within Perth and Kinross. And I would like to formally acknowledge and thank colleagues across Perth and Kinross Council and NHS Tayside. The engagement over recent months has been constructive, it's been solution focused, and rooted in realism about both our statutory responsibilities and the experience of the people that we support. Perth and Kinross Council's decision on the 4th of March to provide an additional £10 million, with over £9 million of that being recurring, has been absolutely critical. Without that level of support, we simply could not have proposed a deliverable balanced budget today whilst maintaining safe levels of services. I would also like to thank the Health and Social Care Finance team, the teams that are delivering our services, and the senior management team who have worked through an extensive and often difficult process of reviewing every part of our expenditure, carrying out detailed impact assessments and working to identify a set of deliverable savings. Given the size of the gap between the available funding and the scale of the services that are required, many of those involved have gone well beyond what would normally be expected during budget planning, and I would want to acknowledge that. And also to yourselves, our IGB members, for your continued support, for your scrutiny and your patience whilst we've worked through the detail in the lead up to today. I've said this before, but I continue to be very grateful to be part of a supportive board, one that seeks to understand the challenges being faced and that takes a solution-focused approach. Before turning to the key messages in the report, I do want to note that the NHS Tayside budget has not yet been approved or formally set, and therefore there remains a degree of risk should the final NHS position differ from the assumptions that we've used in this paper. However, the assumptions we've made are aligned with the Scottish Government financial planning assumptions, and I'm also in regular discussion with the NHS Tayside Director of Finance regarding the funding assumptions that we've made. For 26-27, the IGB is facing recurrent financial pressures of just over £22.2 million. And that's made up of £6 million within our health services and £16.2 million within social care. This is driven by pay, inflation, drug costs and prescribing, and an increasing need and complexity across all care groups. And these figures highlight the scale of the challenge we are planning for and the importance of the assumptions, the savings and the contributions that are set out in the report. The budget paper today sets out three key messages. The first, with the Perth and Kinross Council budget contribution now confirmed and the NHS Tayside budget assumptions in place, I can recommend a balanced budget for 26-27, and members are asked today to approve the pressures and savings set out in the report. The second being our financial strategy, having efficiency first. This has led to significant recurrent savings that we've already delivered or are in train to deliver. As a result, the further opportunities from efficiency are very limited, and the savings presented in this paper reflect what is realistically deliverable without significant service impact. The next step is a focus on service change, improvement and transformation. And there's more detail within section 7 and page 106 of your pack and your report today. And this can and will only address part of our financial challenge. Transformation and improvement will help to manage demand, it will help to improve how people move through our services, and it will help to make services more sustainable. But time, capacity and investment is needed to achieve this. Therefore, the Transformation Improvement Programme for 26 to 29 is crucial. It is not optional for us to be able to sustain and safe and reliable services within our available funding. But as well as the improvements we implement within the services, our ability to meet the needs of our population and to fulfil national policy depends on national funding. Third key message is around, while I'm recommending a balanced budget today, this does not resolve our underlying financial challenge. The medium-term gap for 2027 to 2029 is forecast at over 4.6 million. The pressures are linked to population growth, complexity, drug costs and prescribing, workforce and rurality that continue to outpace funding growth. Therefore, while the position for today is positive, considerable challenges do remain and much of the hard work is ahead. You're very aware that these challenges are not unique to Perth and Kinross, and the financial pressures across health and social care nationally, and particularly within social care, are well documented. And it's important to recognise that while we do have significant work ahead, the position we're in today is a positive one. It's one that's focused on improvement and sustainability rather than severe reductions to services. Many integration joint boards this month will be setting budgets that require deeply difficult service cuts. That we are not in that position reflects the strength of partnership working between the IGB, Perth and Kinross Council and NHS Tayside, and that shared determination to protect the essential services for people of Perth and Kinross. The budget presented today represents a very important step forward for the IGB. It reflects strong partnership working, a clear focus on protecting essential services, and a realistic understanding of the needs of Perth and Kinross. But it also gives us a stable starting point that allows us to focus on improving and transforming our services rather than managing a deficit at the outset. And that puts us in a position where we can plan ahead, and it sets the tone for ongoing improvement, which will need to be supported financially, organisationally and operationally, so that we can meet their needs with financial responsibility and sustainability. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
It's on the rehabilitation bed review and also the one underneath it in regards to organisational change, different things that will happen with that. Looking at and I agree with the statement that reliance on hospital-based traditional healthcare, it doesn't really meet the needs of the community. However, there is still a need in some areas for that. It's a plea that I know I am involved in this, okay, but it's for other staff side to be involved in when these conversations really start to take pace. I understand we're still at the beginning of the conversations with this, and Amanda Taylor and I I'm around that group. It's just the language there in that could give staff some anxiety when this obviously it's public now, so it's going to have some anxiety along with that. I just want to reassure other areas that staff side are around that, and we will take this forward when we feel it's required. Also, the efficiency of the management and support. Again, I'm through that. It's really just to give assurances that I'm around this, so that we're not having issues that we've had in previous years of things happening and me not being aware of it. I am there. It's just we're still at very early stages, and I would welcome more conversation when we're getting at pace with both these pieces of work. Because I do think that that's something that you'll need myself and my other colleagues around to progress.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
All right. It was just, all right. It was just to say, Lindsay, yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for pointing that out, and happy to have further discussions as you suggest. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I just want to take the opportunity to thank the Chief Finance Officer, the Chief Officer and the two heads of service to my left for their work in getting us to the position of having a balanced budget and making sure that we've had the interests of those who need and use our services at the centre of everything that we've done. I think that's been a really unwavering commitment on their behalf that's allowed us to get to that. Clearly, there's been quite a lot of engagement both with the IJB in terms of the board and the development sessions in terms of recognising both the demographic changes that we've been experiencing and also the changes in terms of work practice that's had to go alongside that. And I think what we're also saying today is that the work doesn't stop today. The transformation still continues, but I think what we've got is an unwavering commitment in terms of the values that those who need our services will continue to get them. And again, support from both the council and the NHS have been really welcome in that space as well. So just want to note that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks very much for this, and thanks for all the effort that went into making this possible. And quite rightly, there's been a lot of effort, and there has to be a gratitude to the council as well for their involvement in that. And it may be a question you could ask, it may be a question you can't answer, but I'm going back to the East Subnational. Have you any indication of the impact? I know that it's not hanging, but is there any early indication of finances that are going to be required for the new planning ideas of the East, although we don't know what the planning ideas are yet? But there obviously got to be any action's got a reaction to the early indicators of any financial pressures we'll be under.
I just think, Martin, I don't have, when you said it's maybe a question you can't answer, I don't think we can answer that yet, but I think just reflecting on the discussion much earlier in this meeting, I think there's a huge amount of change nationally happening, and that the Integration Joint Board here in Perth and Kinross is going to have to keep abreast of those changes and understand what that might mean. But I think there's something in the letter that directs the East and West developments that says the role of the IGBs won't change. However, I think its approach, or the board's approach to its strategic plan, needs to be kept under review in the light of the changes that take place. I think that's something just to be thinking about going forward. We currently have a strategic plan 24 to 27, but some of these actually national changes and developments may require an earlier update of that rather than waiting to 27.
Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. I feel as though we've seen so many iterations of this budget and its way to getting here, both through the IGB and through the council in particular, that I don't really have any questions to ask about the budget itself. But I do have a question around Appendix 5, which is the Fairness and Equality Impact Assessment Report. And there are a few reds in there. Well, there's a lot of greens, which is always very welcome, but there's a few reds that are less welcome. So I'm just wondering, how do we make sure that we mitigate those negative impacts as we go through the year? How does that link into our overall performance reporting, etc.?
Yeah, what I would highlight is we're seeing a lot of the reds around the pressures are an indication of, should that pressure not be approved, there would be a negative impact, is my understanding, because the pressures obviously are going forward for your approval today, and I'm showing a way that we can manage that within a balanced budget. But should that not be approved, there would be a negative consequence of that.
Okay, thank you. I think we still need to keep an eye on it though, because maybe through audit and performance or something, we can start to have a look at that and see if what those impacts are, because there's no point in saying we're still going to do something in a balanced budget. The impact on the people that we serve is negative. Comment, not question.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Donna, I think what you're trying to say was if the IGB doesn't approve the pressure that we have in that particular area, then we're going to, the negative impact will be, so where else are we going to mitigate that, and how are we going to fix, is that right? So it's, if the IGB was not to approve those pressures, then there's going to be a negative impact at that level. So I think that's what you're trying to say, Donna. So it feels quite counterintuitive, and that's what I think that sometimes happens. And I think maybe in the way that's explained, I think we'll take that forward in terms of a bit of learning about how we cover that in our reports. But so if you were not to approve any of these pressures, then we would have to go away and take some action that will have a direct negative impact on the people that are receiving our services.
Any more questions on our 26 to 29 budget? No? Okay. I think acknowledging the point that Mr. Black was making, I keep getting told to move this close to my mouth. I think acknowledging the point that Mr. Black was making in terms of the contribution from the council did agree to set a council tax increase of 8.9%. I think by my calculations, 7% out of that 8.9 is the recurring 9 million that's coming to the IJB. So it's a significant chunk. I think we should. Mr. Chief Social Work Officer has said it, but I think we should put on board on record the board's thanks to Donna and the finance team in particular, but also all of the wider staff that are involved in bringing together the information that comprises the budget in terms of the pressures and savings, and to Jackie and her senior team for the firstly for the work that they've done in terms of bringing the budget, but also in terms of the discussions and the negotiations that they've had in terms of the partnership working with both NHS Tayside and the council to bring us to this position. I don't know if members have seen the stories in the press from other IJB meetings. We are very fortunate to be in a position where we're bringing forward a balanced budget for consideration this afternoon, and that's involved a huge amount of work and negotiation, and we should be grateful for all of the effort that's gone into that.
I may just add to that, not just to this IGB, but also to the various budget review groups within the council and to the various council groups and the finance team, and helping people actually understand about the difference, between the IGB governance and a council department. So I think that it might have felt like a lot of duplicate work, but I think it was hugely important to make sure that everybody had a common understanding right across the board of what the issues were and how to address them. So,
thank you very much. Then, can we agree to approve the budget set out in Appendix 1? Note that an additional update will be given after NHS Tayside's budget has been finalised, which I think is due towards the end of April, 30th of April. Approve the expenditure pressures set out in Appendix 2 and the savings and funding proposals set out in Appendix 2. Note the risks set out in Section 12, and note the 27-28 and 28-29 provisional budgets and the additional work required to bring those years into balance. And therefore, can we agree to issue the directions set out in Appendix 4? That's agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, item 7 on the agenda is Audit and Performance Committee and Governance. First is an update, a verbal update from the Chair of the Audit and Performance Committee, Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. This will probably be the shortest item on the agenda today, but so the IGB Audit and Performance Committee last met on the 23rd of February this year. generally, Perth and Kinross IGB continues to perform well, and there are no major issues or concerns to report. As per my last update, there was a question raised at December's Audit and Performance Committee regarding whistleblowing disclosure process. And in order to protect confidentiality, an update was provided in the private session of the meeting that we held in February. There were no issues or concerns raised by members that required further investigation or action, but there is an expectation that if there are future whistleblowing events, that the Audit and Performance Committee will be provided with an update at the appropriate time. Also, I think if you'll recall at my last update, we noted that in December's meeting, we had there been a sort of request or a consensus that we would start thinking about looking and setting in place forward-looking performance targets rather than always looking back, and perhaps to think about looking at perhaps some themed aspects of scrutiny, so we could do a bit of a deeper dive into particular subjects. But prior to the meeting in February, we agreed that we wouldn't bring them there, mainly and partly because a lot of the staff were embroiled in budget preparations and considerations, but also because the budgets itself and how they would pan out might impact on the services and the targets that we might want to set. So we'll bring these forward in June, and I'll be able to give you a further update then at that point in time. Excuse me. And apart from that, there isn't really much else to report at this time. The next meeting of the Audit and Performance Committee will be held on the 22nd of June, and the paper should be available on the 15th of June. And as always, members of the IGB are welcome to attend. Any questions?
No, if there's no questions on the Audit and Performance Committee update, we'll move on to the Chief Social Work Officer's Annual Report for 24-25. Chief Social Work Officer.
Thank you, Chair. It's not my intention to go over the report. I'm conscious it's been to a number of forums and it does relate to the period 24-25. There have been quite a lot of reports since that time that the IJB has been cited on in terms of issues around budget pressures and also demographic changes as well, and also the business of social work and social care. So I think the board has probably got a more up-to-date picture through those means than this report as it stands at the moment. Having said that, I think the report does provide detailed information in terms of the different types of services that are provided by adult social work. We've spoken a wee bit today in terms of workforce planning and the work that's been done in terms of ensuring that we are doing as much as we can to attract recruits into our kind of social care and social work profession. And I'm also conscious that the IJB also heard from the Adult Protection Coordinator and Chair towards the end of last year in terms of the annual report as well, that provides further details in terms of our adult protection activity. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on that basis.
Any questions for Chief Social Work Officer? Nope. Okay. Can we then agree to take assurance from the Chief Social Work Officer's annual report for 24-25 that despite challenges, overall performance across social work and social care service areas has remained high in delivering quality services? Agreed. Thank you very much. For information on the agenda, 8.1 is our work plan for the rest of the year and the list of planned development sessions. Any questions on the work plan? Except to say that I think we are going to look at moving the date of the December development session because that would be before the Scottish Government's budget, and it would be more useful to have the session once we had an indication at least of a budget allocation. Mrs. Aldridge had a question.
Thank you. It was just to ask about so I know that the mental health services strategic update is scheduled regularly moving forward. And I just wondered if the autism and learning disability strategic delivery and implications of that, I'd note that that's in June. And I wondered, will outputs from that be incorporated in the regular updates of the mental health services? Or should there be another update scheduled in for later in the year? Thank you.
So I think for each of the strategies, we will have the annual report updates. The standing item relating to mental health and learning disability services was as a result of the historic issues in those areas and us wanting to keep it at the forefront of our considerations as a board. And certainly one of the discussions that we had with the Chief Executive of NHST side at the development session last week was just to sort of highlight that for us as an IJB, where strategic, the Chief Officer is the lead for strategic planning on mental health and learning, inpatient mental health and learning disability, it was important for us to have more regular updates than might otherwise be the case. I hope that explains a little bit, but
yeah, so I'm just thinking particularly with the transitions that are ongoing, if it just might be good and with what's gone past historically, if it just might be pertinent to keep on top of the developments and just even if it's just a reassurance that the transitions are going well, but it would also be good to of any issues to be brought to our attention moving forward.
okay, we'll take that on board. Thank you. So, Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the delivering on strategic objectives, the lead partner services update. Is that for the delegated services that we have here? Is it for everything?
I think that's that'll be the equivalent of the paper that we had back in December, where all three chief officers contributed towards reporting on their delegated services. And I'm getting nods, so I must be right.
I'm going to see that under consideration.
What, the bit about whether I'm right or not?
No, whether or not it's sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you didn't have your mic on when you said I was on, right? Okay, so if there's no other questions on the work plan, just some future meeting dates are noted on the agenda. Any questions on those dates? No. Okay. Oh, goodness me. Questions on the dates? Right. Okay. Councillor Illingworth, you can go first because Martin always gets the first question.
Yeah, development session is currently down for the 11th of December 26. Are we likely to move it back a week to the 18th? Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll put my apologies in for the 10th of September. I can't do Thursday.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, just before I formally close this meeting, this is Jackie Pepper's last meeting as Chief Officer of the IJB. We will have a small presentation, so if people want to stay behind and stay online afterwards, but I wanted to take this opportunity in the formal part of the meeting to put on record our thanks as a board to Jackie. Jackie has been on board with the board, has been on board since the inception of the Integration Joint Board as firstly Chief Social Work Officer, and then as Interim Chief Officer and as Chief Officer. And I think you're I'm pretty sure you're the longest serving of our three Chief Officers. We heard earlier in the meeting, I was talking about how Perth and Kinross IJB was regarded as leading in the way that we were in terms of some aspects of the public partners. We also heard about how Perth and Kinross IJB was in the meeting with the Cabinet Secretary was recognised as a high-performing IJB. And we've also heard about how we have come to set today a balanced budget. None of this happens by accident. It is in huge part due to Jackie's professionalism and her leadership. And we have been very lucky to have her as our Chief Officer. And we would all like to thank her for her time here and wish her a very happy retirement. If there's no other business, we'll close the formal meeting there. But as I say, do stay on for we have a couple of presentations to make. Thank you.